Hey, what's going on, everybody? As always, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's enjoying their day. I hope everyone is enjoying this summer months. You know how it is. Depending on where you live, it's gonna start getting cool, start getting cold, real quick. So I hope everybody's enjoying the grills, out there in the pools, getting a chance to enjoy that weather. As you know, I'm sure people been watching about the the Delta variant, COVID-19 Delta variant. I know I had a person up here get tested positive for it. So I just hope everybody's continuing to be safe. I don't know if they're going to go back to the mask restrictions, but continue to be safe out here. Keep your social distancing, continue to, if you choose to get vaccinated, I know some people are against it, and I'm not going to advocate for you to vaccinate or unvaccinate. But if you choose to do it, you're still, to me, you're still not safe. People still catching it with the vaccine, but just continue to be safe. We don't want what happened in 2020 to happen again. Go back to that lockdown procedures. I know it sucked for me, so let's just be safe. All right. For those who are new, this is Rebuilding Community Trust. This site is dedicated to the issues of the day, dealing with law enforcement, politics, anything, race relations, diversity. But I hope people are enjoying the content. I know it's been a while since I've been on this channel. We talked about the critical race theory last time. I'm going to talk about it some more today as well. Some interesting stuff came up that I want to talk about. And for those who are new, those who has been tuning in, thank you. I'm never taking for granted for those that have been supportive, sharing. For those new, subscribe, hit the bell. Forgot to say that. But those who's been supportive, thank you for supporting my stuff and continue to share it. I got an interesting perspective on the critical race theory. Got a partner of mine. We've been both kind of advocating and doing some ideas to look at different things and how to expand on equality issues. So he gave me some interesting perspectives that I'm going to kind of share as well, and talk about critical race theory and how it's affecting the state of Texas, even affecting the church. And for those who don't know, I have another channel, Freedom Fighters, where I'm talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ and sharing a lot of information, topics, and things like that. Just closed out the Do You Love Me series. And I'm working on the Judge Righteously series as now. So if you're interested in that and you want to get a word, go to the Freedom Fighters channel. But so before I start that, it was an article I read. It was a couple weeks ago, and it was with the St. Louis Police Department. And it was interesting. It was African American undercover cop. He was working a case, and he was with the protests and during the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, and he was attacked by his police officer that was in the same department, his fellow officer. And not only that, another officer, she was questioned about it, what she saw in engagements, and she lied and she did falsifying information, which also was found out in the trial. The officer that did the physical abuse to that officer, he had 4 years. And it's showing the society and the way things are going. It's starting to show the conduct is not being tolerated, especially against African American officers. And in a sense, it's good to start seeing accountability being measured, but it's also a shame to see if I'm working for the same department as you, and we're on the same team. Why are I'm getting attacked by you? Where it's a point where I have PTSD and I have stitches and I have concussions, and also I'm suing the city, the same department that I'm working for. Why is it that the officers that I'm working with, my fellow brothers in blue, are not doing the due diligence to make sure that every officer comes home safe and also be the advocate? Now, again, we don't know what happened, but from what I read, it's like this man literally attacked this man doing his job for whatever case may have been. And we can guess the motive. We can assume that it was racially motivated. But at the end of the day, it's unsatisfactory to know a fellow officer. If I was working in that police department, I'm not safe around him because he has a different motive than me. And if if I'm working, and no matter how big the department is, I mean, people kind of, if you don't know, this is why you do due diligence to check. If you feel like this man was doing something out of line, you don't beat him down. Did he? And we don't know, but he attacked the officer. We don't know the details, but you beat the man down so he can't. You just beat him down. You didn't check to see anything. You didn't check his ID. You didn't check anything. You just assumed he was a thug in the street, and you beat this man down. Come to find out, he was a fellow officer undercover. And I can't sit here. I can't sit here and say that you didn't see this man one time in the police department. You see him in roll call. You didn't see him in the locker room. You didn't see him moving throughout the department. You didn't see him. It's hard for me to believe that you don't see the officers that you work with. Departments are pretty big. You know, if you got 2,000-3,000 officers, you know, plus leadership, you may not see him often. You may not see him. You know, you may not see him, but it's hard for to believe. St. Louis. I didn't do the numbers and see how big the department is, but it's kind of, I wouldn't say that they didn't know who he was. Even if you're checking and you're doing the IDs, you're doing the arrest or the search procedure or whatever, you're going to find out, you probably find his badge, you're going to run his badge, it's just going to pop up that he was an officer working undercover. So now you're not only hurting the mission and the assignment that the officer had, but you're also hurting him. So you don't even care about that. So people are getting so racially, you know, tension, so much tension with law enforcement that now you're attacking the police officers that are working for you or working with you. Now you're attacking those that are inside the force. You're turning on each other because you got your own motives. Interesting article, man. It's like I've seen it all. It seems like, you know, but I just continue to advocate for accountability. Leadership in those departments are checking their people. And end of the day, you can't prevent everything. Everything can't be scrutinized to the point where you think you know what's going on. But if you're working African American, it don't matter what race. If you're working in these departments and you feel like you're a target because you're African American or you're doing something to do with the mission, whatever the mission allows for the officer to be in and working at capacity he's working for, it's something should be said. And unfortunately, you got to be careful, because you just don't know who's you're going to be a target for. So that's kind of what I want to start off with, but it was just interesting enough to me to talk about. Any comments on that, feedback, would be welcomed. A positive, negative, indifferent. I mean, I pretty much took the fire so far. So I'm going to jump over here to the critical race theory. We talked about it last time, and we had a lot of issues. I had a lot of comments. I'm not going to say issues, comments about, how it affected. A lot of people said they didn't think critical race theory was something that needed to be put in schools. So again, when you think about critical race theory, it was a legal theory developed 4 decades ago. And it talked about how African Americans, slavery didn't end when Jim Crow, it didn't end when Emancipation Proclamation, when President Abraham Lincoln let the slaves free. It continued. It talks about systematic racism. It talks about, how it affected redlining, homes, loans, affected jobs and industrial industry, affected healthcare, so the social economic status. The race theory was developed to target racism in a structural, systematic way in this country. And when it goes to the educational side, a lot of people do not want it there. The state of Texas right now, they're dealing with this bill being passed where it's affecting schools. I remember one article, it said they want to take out the Martin Luther King, his role, his contribution to civil rights. They want to deal with the women, the women's movement during that time. They want to take out Ku Klux Klan. They want to take out a lot of the critical points of the history that happened. And I understand that it's political. I understand that people, especially white people, right? They don't want that stuff to be in schools because it promotes hate, discord, right? I understand that, but I really feel like that if you take that stuff out, it's going to delete what African Americans went through during that time. It's going to, people need to know, and I'll say it again, people need to know what's going on during that time. People need to understand history during that time. It needs to be taught. And if it's such a big deal that you don't want to promote it, then why is it still happening? Why is the police still killing African American men? Why is it opportunities for African Americans not being presented? You know what I'm saying? So it needs to be talked about. I know people disagree, and I know a lot of the people that watch the videos, they saying no, it promotes this, it promotes hatred, but it needs to be talked about. People need to understand what happens to the minorities in this country. Asian Americans. It was an interesting article I read the other day about Asian Americans. One Asian American author said that it's not true that Asian Americans experience the CRT. You know what I'm saying? That the Asians don't see it, but I feel some aspects that Asian Americans do experience some type of racism. It may not be to extent as as African Americans or other minorities, but they experience it. You look at the couple of months where, when COVID came out, it was a lot of attacks on Asian Americans. I know President Biden passed something in the bill for Asian Americans and protections against them. But taking out civil rights and African American history as far as what we went through in this country is unacceptable. I think this needs to be taught. And it's interesting because there's a graduate studies program and a graduate studies legal term and legal theory and an excerpt. So it's taught in master's degree levels and bachelor's degree levels, undergrads, right? But it's in schools, in high school. People don't think it should be, kids should be inundated with American history as far as African Americans. But it's woven, the history, if you take that out, it's a critical part of history. You can't just delete what happened to African Americans during that time because it's inconvenient or you don't want to promote quote unquote discord. It's something that is budding. It is going to continue to grow. And if, state of Texas right now, they're debating whether they're going to erase, take it out of schools. And it's interesting that if they do that, because Texas is very, very conservative, red state, right? Then, trend is going to follow throughout the U.S., the country. And then it's going to pretty much erase one of the most important pieces of history in America. Martin Luther King, he was a pillar of the African American community, and the things that he's done contributed to what we have today. Not just a holiday, but a lot of the stuff he did to try to promote equality amongst whites and African Americans will be deleted. A lot of the women's rights, Rosa Parks, and many others. A lot of people that contributed to the freedom of slaves, or the rights and civil rights, the laws and legislation for African Americans in this country will be erased. People will not know about it. It will be something that is not there. I had an interesting perspective from a partner, and he was telling me a lot how that this is the move politically to delete this stuff out. And it's really. I don't understand why people don't want to learn about this. Why is this such an issue to learn about, especially in the nowadays, if you have any care for African Americans and why things are the way they are, don't you want to learn about why it is? And don't you want to learn it and then try to help fix it? If we put it in schools, you have schools with a majority white kids, learn it. Don't just say I'm white and I don't want to learn it. For African American kids, they still need to learn it so they can understand the mindset of what happened during that time, so they can also be able to understand what world they're living in as of now. The interesting thing about this article I'm reading, it says they say it's a racist against white children in that it teaches black and brown children to see themselves as victims. They argue that educators should instead be teaching unity, which has become an anti-CRT buzzword in its own right. Interestingly said in this article, victims. We're teaching black and brown children to be victims, right? By talking about history. It's an educational perspective to see this is what happened to people that look like me, right? And the people that don't look like me, they need to also learn it so they can know how to treat people and build that unity. You can't build unity by just erasing everything. You can't delete. And then what's going to happen when a black or brown child gets pulled over by the police and they get their head slammed into the pavement? What happens when you see George Floyd or others? What happens when you do what's right and the officer still shoots and kills you? What happens when, you get treated unfairly by educators, or you in a bad school system? What are those black and brown kids going to say? They're still victimized. They're still getting treated the same as it was then. It doesn't matter if it's lesser or worse. They're still getting treated. So what do we say to that? By deleting history? Oh, unity. What unity? When that stuff still happens to black and brown children. It should be a priority. Just like we teach math, science, and economics. This is a piece of history, social studies, whatever history aspect, American history. It should be incorporated so to give an idea. Okay, this is what our history was like. Because guess what? The media is going to paint a picture of this every day in the news. So it's in a sense, if you're erasing the critical race theory out the books, guess what you're going to have? You're going to they're going to see it on the news. The media is inundated and saturated with this stuff, and they're going to be like, well, has this always been like this? So I feel like when people say no, a majority of them were white, and they're more conservative because they feel like that they have it could be an agenda of, I want to continue racism. I don't care, you know, or some people saying it promotes hatred and discord among the American people. This history that happened during that time, it wasn't meant to be nice. It wasn't meant to be pretty, or it wasn't meant to create unity. It was what it was. Racism is ugly. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing pretty about it. There's nothing pretty about lynching. There's nothing pretty about what happened to George Floyd. There's nothing pretty about what happened to Emmett Till. There's nothing pretty about none of that stuff. But it needs to be readdressed because it's a problem that continues. And I feel like that African American children, I mean all races really, need to learn these things. You need to understand what is going on in the communities and what we got going on in our schools. Texas governor said he wants to abolish CRT. Ted Cruz has compared to CRT to the Ku Klux Klan, and nationally organized conservative networks has encouraged parents to take action. Again, I feel like that it needs to be talked about. This society where culture needs to, you know, we want to be unified, diversity, inclusion. I'm with it. I'm with unity. I'm not against unity. I want whites and blacks, Asians, Hispanics to all come together and be able to go to the same schools, get along, grow up in the same neighborhoods, go to college, be influenced by culture. I love the unity, but this part is critical for them to understand, because regardless, a white person and a black person living this life is two different lives. You can grow up in a white neighborhood as a black person, and you may get some of that privilege, or you may see it in a sense, but as a black person, it's always going to be a difference. Unless you got the money and you live in the nice neighborhoods and you go to the nice schools, the chances of you still succeeding is a lot higher, but it's a different life. The goal to get people to understand what we went through as African Americans and minorities is to see it, is to have those hard conversations, is to look at those things, ugly things in the mirror, and say, man, this is what my ancestors did. This is what my ancestors went through. And then it's going to get, and it should create a unity in the sense, well, man, all right, that happened. I'm not like that, but I'm willing to make a change. I'm willing to stand up. I'm willing to say, how can we fix this? How can we actually eradicate this issue, if we can eradicate it in our lifetime? All right. Interesting enough as well, the church. I'm not going to get too, into it with the church, but a lot of the church members, the church pastors, and some of the church leaders, they're talking about this in the sense of it's causing discord, and it's going against the word of God in the sense of having a multitude of all men worshiping Christ. I'm with that too. I'm with the unity aspect in the church. But if people don't want to talk about this, the church is the very place this should be talked about. People have to have the unction and the gumption to stand up and say, this is an issue. Whether you're African American, whether you're white, whether you're black pastor, white pastor, this is a conversation needs to have in the church, because the Bible doesn't promote racism. In a way, you can say it's slavery, but in the New Testament, Jesus has all men coming unto him. All men worship. If you're a Christian, you're in the Christian church, you should have no problem with racism. Should not be in you. Something interesting said in here. It says, one comment says, it's not about where we came from, it's about where we're going. And as long as we're pointing back and staring at the ugly nature of what slavery was and making this a today problem, when it is actually a problem that we overcame, did we overcome it? Then we're going to stay in this oppressed versus oppressor mindset, and it's causing division in different people. It's causing people to hate white people. That person said, did we overcame? We overcame. That person said we overcame. We did not overcome. We did not overcome. It's still happening. That's the thing people understand. In that person's mindset, they think slavery is over. So they therefore don't promote CRT. And they think that by promoting and talking about it and talking about what's going on, that, oh, we're going to cause hatred towards African American and whites and cause that division, that divide. But don't say that we overcame, because we ain't overcame anything. This problem is still going on. People are still dealing with racist issues and lack of opportunity. And this, I really think that this needs to stay. People need to know. It don't have to be, it's not meant to feel bad and, oh, you hate white people, but guess what? If you take this out, the problem has not went away. Black people are still dying at the hands of white police officers. Racism is still going on, mistreatment, lack of opportunity. And the first thing people say is, oh, well, it's your fault as a black man that you hadn't had opportunity. You should have studied more. You should have went to a better school. You should have took advantage of college. You should have did this. You need to pick your bootstraps up and go out here and do it. In a sense, that's true. But we know good and well that opportunities for African American men and minorities have not taken effect. Interesting thing on the partner, he gave me some interesting. He says, economics. Economics is what's going to cause African Americans to stand on top, as far as investing in money, know how to invest, being able to take out money and use it in the sense of create a voice with that money. He thinks that economics is key to the freedom of African Americans in this country, creating our own banks, creating our own Wall Street, like we did in Tulsa, right? During that time, Tulsa massacre, the Black Wall Street. I agree, money is a big part of it. I think I talked about it before in my last videos. If you go back, that money is a voice. Money is a voice. It speaks. The more unity in economics, the better off. Whether we're invested in homes, we're invested in the stock market, we're invested in ourselves, businesses, entrepreneurship, consumerism, and commerce. That is it has a voice. And I do agree. When I told him I agree, we need to talk more about how can we make economics our strong front. Instead of being an 70, 80% consumer, we can be an investor. We can be a builder. So when it comes to this, like I said, for me, critical race theory, I stand by it. I think people need to understand the history. We need to, and it don't have to be a drawn out course. It don't have to be a drawn out curriculum. But I think that, if we take away this, what African Americans went through in this country, and we just think by taking away it's not going to promote racism, that people are very wrong, because racism still exists. And the people that say it doesn't is the ones that don't deal with it. And the people that say that as well, they say, it's you as an African American man, it's you as an African American woman, it's your fault, it's not our problem, blah, blah, blah. That's the problem. That's the problem. So to me, when you take away this concept, it's just all you're doing is setting minorities back, because again, when that person gets their head slammed against the vehicle because of the color of their skin, or they're getting knees in their neck like George Floyd, right? And I go to that white person, what are you going to say about that? You took away CRT. What are you going to say when this stuff continues? What are you going to tell the minority, the African American male, the Hispanic, the Asian? What are you going to tell them? Oh, racism doesn't exist. We overcame. You can't say that now, because what the very thing is that were used as a teaching tool, you took away, because it promotes hating of white people, or promotes division. But when a black child gets beat up by a military person that's white because he was walking down the street, or he's getting shot because he told the officer he had a weapon and he reached for his weapon as he was ordered by the cop, and he pulled his weapon and shoots him anyway, what do you tell them? What do you say? Guess what? White people are still going to be hated because of what happens in the news now. The media is the biggest enemy. So when someone watches the news and they see another black officer do something to another officer treats another African American person wrong, what are you going to say then? People need to understand the history. People need to see it. People need to talk about it. So I encourage people to stay educated. As times go forward, and there's going to be, state legislation passed around about, the CRT theory in different states, and even federal government gets involved. People need to research and understand, look at their hearts and see, is it really necessary to get rid of this. People, it's another way we can teach history. If you take it away out of schools, it's going to be up to the parents to teach it. More so African American parents are going to be talking about it, you know what I'm saying, because they're the ones experiencing it. If you take it out of schools, 9 times out of 10, a lot of people won't talk about it. They'll just think it's something that's in the past and never to be brought up again. While the stuff still goes on now in our streets today. While racism still plagues this country through the criminal justice system, through many opportunities being pushed around. Now you see police officers being held accountable. So we see a shift. We see, the current administration trying to do things about it, passing the bills, and we see people trying to hold people accountable for what they're doing. And I applaud that. But I don't think people need the history aspect. I don't think people need to take that out of schools. People need to still see that. People need to talk about it. Because people then will realize that this is still an issue. And until it's completely eradicated, the history needs to stay. Until racism no longer exists in this country, it needs to stay, period. Forget the conservatives, because it causes division, or I'm white and I don't understand, or this and that. Understand it. Learn it. Learn it. If you want to help African Americans, learn this stuff. Don't just say, it doesn't matter to me because I don't have to deal with that. Yes, it causes division, but like I said before, it's meant to cause that because it happened. The Holocaust, ugly as it was, it happened. You know what I'm saying? Hitler, it happened. Slavery, it happened. Eradication of the Indians and Native Americans, it happened. And end of the day, what this old saying says, history will repeat itself. So yes, we need to continue to speak on it, continue to educate those, empower, to make a change, to create unity. People need to be aware. If you're not aware, if you don't speak, if you take away the culture and the history, then it's gonna fade away, and then people's not gonna know. Meanwhile, while this stuff is still continuing on in our news, in our media, in our streets, people, minorities are not getting treated fairly, and inequality, and all that other stuff that goes on. So that's all I have. I'm straight to the point with it. If anybody got comments or questions, or if you want to still debate and this is still taken out of schools, I want people to comment and say, why do you think we need to get rid of it? Besides telling me that it causes division and it hates white people, give me a better reason. Give me a realistic answer on why you think CRT should be abolished in our schools. Besides those two things, give me a reason why racism is still happening in this country. Give me a reason why African Americans are still getting killed by the police. Not to what the person did, but because of like that story I gave at the beginning. That police officer was doing his job and he got injured by a white police officer for doing his job. Same police officer, same working in the same department, doing his job, and he was assaulted and beat by his fellow officer in blue. But you want to get rid of CRT? You want to tell me that racism is over? We overcame racism. But I'm working as a police officer and I'm doing the job that I was told to do, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and I get mollywopped by someone that I'm working with, and then the person that saw it lied about it. But you want to tell me that we should abolish CRT? We shouldn't talk about it when the racism still occurs? Give me a better answer than that. Give me a better answer than that. If those who comment on why CRT should be abolished, give me a real reason why. Don't tell me because it's hateful and it causes division and that it's unnecessary, or whatever answer you want to give me. Give me a legit reason than that. If you can't give me a legit reason, don't comment on telling me I should just get over it. So that's all I got. I know it's a little rough, but you know what I'm saying? These are the type of hard conversations we need to have. So please share, subscribe. If you got a topic you want to talk about, I'm going to look for some more stuff when it comes to law enforcement and put it out. So be blessed. Take care. Share and subscribe. Hit the bell.